Tony Grinberg and Mike Thorstad served on the board for many years and contributed us to getting the diversion going forward. Mike Thorstad was kind of our quiet guy from West Fargo. Bernie, we do have a pictures like this made for him as well. And Tony Grinberg helped us with our finances and going forward on our financial plan as it presently sits. So just wanted to start out the meeting with giving that thanks to both those parties that have helped us out. And Bernie Dardis, you've got a big role to take on. And remember, Mike was maybe a little quiet, but he was mighty. So I think part of those roles might reverse, as you might be a little bit more noisy. But if you could hand off his picture sometime as well, Bernie, I'd like to do that. So he has done great work for us. So appreciate it. And that opened up a lot of dialogue with West Fargo. So we'll call the meeting to order. Joel, do we need to do roll call or do we just start?
Mayor, let's do a roll call, please.
Okay.
Dr. Mahoney.
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn. Mayor Judd.
Here.
Mr. Hendrickson. Ms. Carlson.
Here.
Mrs. Shirling.
I'm here.
Mr. Peterson.
I'm here.
Mr. Steen.
Here.
Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mr. Wayland. Mr. Olson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting, please?
Steen moves.
Peterson. Or second, whatever.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Next order of business is a motion to approve the agenda.
Moved by Campbell.
Second,
Second.
Judd.
All those in favor say aye.
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 So we have a consent agenda. There's two items: financial report, which is your attachment 01, and you have the voucher approval. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Steen moves.
Shirling second.
No, Rick, you got the fastest button of all of us to get that out so quick, but thank you.
I
Roll
just
call
staying
vote.
so long.
Roll call vote, please.
Don, roll call.
Okay. Dr. Mahoney.
Aye.
Mayor Judd.
Aye.
Ms. Carlson.
Yes.
Mrs. Shirling.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mr. Olson.
Yes. Campbell's really for this, I guess.
Don, is that everybody? Are you done?
Yes, that is everybody.
Just announce that when you get to the end, please. A financial committee appointment. Rick, Steen, I think you're going to talk about that. Is that right?
Well, I wasn't going to, but I surely can. I think we're aware of the fact that Commissioner Grinberg was on the Finance Committee, and with his departure from City Council, and then therefore from the board, the Diversion Authority needs to make another appointment to the Finance Committee. And as I understand it, and John can correct me if I'm wrong here, because this is a DA appointment, a Diversion Authority appointment, that individual has to be on the board.
Yes.
And so that's where we're at. So we'd be looking for volunteers or nominees, or some nomination from the Diversion Authority. And again, that individual would have to be a Diversion Authority board member.
So I think, Joel, you wanted to comment to this? I think people met and made a recommendation.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Commissioner Steen is correct. The Diversion Board will have to nominate a member to serve on the Finance Committee and fill Commissioner Grinberg's seat. There has been some discussion. I think Mayor Dardis has indicated that he is willing to assist in that role, and ready and prepared. And I think that would be an extreme value to the Finance Committee to have Mayor Dardis on the board. So we'll be looking for a nomination, and we'll need to take a vote on that, Mayor.
This is Steen. I'll nominate Mayor Dardis to the Finance Committee.
Is there a second?
Peterson, second.
Very good. Roll call vote, please. Don?
Can I please get a repeat on the second?
Chad Peterson was.
Thank you.
Don, can we do a roll call, please?
Dr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mayor Judd,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes. Did you receive?
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Olson.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Don, I think you're forgetting Commission President Dardis, and I believe Fargo may have had a new appointment to the board.
That new
I'm sorry,
appointment
John,
hasn't been made yet. John,
Okay.
be made this Monday, and then we'll have it. It'll probably be Commissioner Strand will go onto the board.
Okay. So Don, we should be making sure to call, ask Mayor Dardis for his vote.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Dardis, how do you vote?
Abstain from this vote.
Thank you. We are glad that Bernie has volunteered to be on this committee, and we expect great work out of you. We just need 120 million more, so please make that happen with your friends in the legislative body, and thank you, Bernie. Executive Director report. Joel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it's been a busy month. As the board knows, we had the contested case hearing in the state of Minnesota for the Minnesota permit, and that took up quite a bit of time for the Diversion Authority staff and consultants. And John will do a recap of the contested case and provide some summary and schedule moving forward of events that will occur associated with that under his report. I'll also indicate a couple other, I think, pretty major things that occurred this last month. I did a presentation to the Water Topics Overview Committee on June 4th. The presentation really consisted of a construction update and a financial update for the committee. The committee was more interested in the financial update due to the concerns of COVID-19 and the drop in the oil revenues in the state of North Dakota. There's a significant pressure on the Resources Trust Fund where the funding for the State Water Commission comes from. And so a lot of the discussions kind of hinged around the deobligation of some existing dollars sitting at the state for the large water projects in an attempt to try to balance the State Water Commission's obligations for the current biennium. So overall, the presentation went very well. It was nice to give everyone a briefing. Because it was remote, it was a little bit difficult to really engage with the committee on any additional questions. So as I had indicated before, most of it was surrounding our financial plan and our financial needs moving into the future. Another notable event happened on June 1st. The Office of the State Engineer approved our version 5 of the mitigation plan. And that version 5 really clarifies a lot of the new programs that we've introduced, such as the Prevent Plant, the Summertime Crop Insurance, the Dispute Resolution Board, and a number of others. It was a requirement of accessing the current biennium funding from the state of North Dakota, and that was the final item that we need to check off for our funding from the state. Yesterday, we met with Governor Burgum and gave him an update on construction activity, program status, contested case hearing status, and overall that meeting went very well. Still very much supportive of the diversion project. I'll do I think John might touch on a P3 update here, but I'll just mention that one-on-one meetings continue. The draft 4 of the RFP will be out to the developers on June 29th. That is the last draft prior to the final draft, which will occur at the end of July. So that's moving forward. All 3 teams are engaged intently, and we have a lot of activity ongoing with one-on-one meetings with each one of those teams. And then John's team is working on quite a few MOUs and project agreements with townships, the counties, and other impacted jurisdictions. So that's taken up quite a bit of John's time, as well as the WIFIA loan closing has escalated into the September-October time period, and the contested case thrown in there. So I think John definitely deserves the thanks. He's been working quite a bit overtime the last few weeks here. So with that, Mr. Chair, that's all I have for the board today. So.
All right, good. Thanks, Joel. Good work on the contested hearing with all the team that was there. I think Terry Williams is here. Can we have a core update at this time?
Good afternoon. This is Terry Williams with the Corps of Engineers. Paul is nice enough to display our monthly update for this month. Number 1 at the diversion inlet structure, driving of H pile and pile is going to continue into July, and we are anticipating that the first concrete pour for that structure will be mid to late July, so looking forward to that. Number 2, the Wild Rice River structure, a lot of earthwork going on. They're excavating the channel where the structure is going to be built and placing that material in the west dam embankment. Number 3, Red River structure, that remains on schedule for having final plans and specs in September of 2021. The physical model is back up and running, and they are setting up cameras and computers such that we and sponsors and the state agencies can participate in alternatives testing virtually. So that's going to be pretty exciting as well. Number 4, we're designing SE1, the western tieback. The plans and specs are a bit delayed on that one. Instead of being available in July, they've moved out into September to incorporate some additional design criteria. Number 7, Drain 27 wetland mitigation. We are going to be having, putting out an environmental assessment next month, and that's going to include a public comment period and a virtual public meeting. And if you go to the back page, a few pictures. So we had some distinguished guests visit the diversion inlet structure in the wild rice a couple weeks ago, as shown on some social media that we put out yesterday. To the right, that's a sample concrete panel for the diversion inlet structure. That's what the walls are going to look like. And then the bottom picture was taken on June 15th of the Red River structure physical model. With that, are there any questions?
Very good. Very good. Local people haven't been doing anything at the construction site then? No signs or anything against all this activity?
I think the last signs I saw out there was at the groundbreaking, which the picture that was shown didn't include those signs, but there was a lot of them.
Okay. John Chackley, are you ready? We're going to tell about what went on in that 2-3 weeks you guys spent in that room.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So I'll start with the contested case hearing recap. I'll try not to take too long, as I know it's summer and people have other activities to get to. So we started a approximate 2-week contested case hearing on June 8th through June originally 19th. We did end the contested case hearing approximately 2 days early. There were 4 parties involved in the contested case hearing: the Diversion Authority, Minnesota DNR, JPA, the Wilkin-Richland County JPA, and the Buffalo Red River Watershed District. The judge had really set the contested case up as the Diversion Authority and Minnesota DNR on one side, and the Wilkin-Richland County JPA and Buffalo Red Watershed District on the other side. The Diversion Authority's witnesses went first during the trial, immediately following opening statements and some procedural motions. The Diversion Authority's witnesses did very well. Everybody that testified on behalf of the Diversion Authority did very well. The technology and the preparation and the access to the exhibits, the familiarity with the information and facts, our witnesses really came across very well. Minnesota DNR was then up and provided its witnesses. One of the issues that came up during the Minnesota DNR testimony was permit condition number 22, which relates to how impacts to the project are mitigated in the southern embankment storage area, and how flowage easements are calibrated and to what level. That was an issue that the judge was particularly interested in. She said that one of her concerns is always real people and how projects impact them. During the course of the Diversion Authority's testimony and the Minnesota DNR's testimony, it appeared that the judge's focus was really not so much on the validity of the permit, but on mitigation issues. Our witnesses withstood the cross-examination very well, and the court did from time to time have to provide some, I won't go as far as to say reprimand, but some guideposts to JPA to stay within the issues that were relevant to the hearing. Following that, the JPA put on its witnesses. Interestingly enough, during the testimony, they had 2 experts. One expert, in summary, provided that he did not like diversion channels, but preferred dams, and actually was advocating a solution that had never been really vetted, and that was just a simple storage area with a dam that would impact property owners in the southern area. Frankly, I was surprised that the Wilkin-Richland Joint Powers Authority would put forth a witness that would make those statements because it would impact their membership. But nonetheless, their witness testified to that. Their second witness, really his testimony was in regards to, I don't like dams, but I like diversion channels. And then their third witness got on the stand and said, I don't like diversion channels or dams, but I like levees, which I think led the judge to some level of confusion about what their actual case was in regards to that they were trying to present. Buffalo Red then went forward with its witnesses. Their witnesses were primarily focused on the federal BCR ratio, which the Minnesota DNR's position is that's not applicable in a Minnesota permitting decision as it's not required under the Minnesota rules. Overall, I would say that the case went well. I never like to predict how a case will go because you know, your decision, your future is always in the hands of a third party. But I feel good that we put on the information and handled the case in the best way we could. The action items coming out of that hearing are the kind of the following schedule. The administrative law judge left the case open for the parties to submit some additional information regarding impacts. The case will remain open until July 15th. And that is the parties can either stipulate to some additional information and testimony regarding impacts or make a motion to that effect to the administrative law judge. Also on July 15th, the parties are asked by the judge to submit proposed findings of fact, and what those are for those non-lawyers on the committee are basically a judge likes assistance in drafting their decisions, so they ask attorneys to prepare draft findings that they view as how the case decision should read. The parties will be Minnesota DNR and Diversion Authority will be submitting draft findings together, and then JPA and Wilkin-Richland County and Buffalo Red Watershed District have the opportunity to submit their proposed findings together. The administrative law judge did not want to hear closing arguments from the parties and instead asked that those be briefed. So those are due at the end of July, which would be approximately July 29. And then the parties are able to submit reply briefs. What those are essentially responses to any arguments that are raised in the closing briefs. Those are due in mid-August and August 14th. This judge has typically taken about 70 days to make a decision. And so we would expect that sometime in October, we would be likely to hear a decision from the administrative law judge. Recall that Minnesota has a somewhat unique process in that the administrative law judge makes a recommendation to the DNR commissioner, and the DNR commissioner then makes the final decision on the permit. By statute, the DNR commissioner has a minimum of 10 days and a maximum of 60 days to issue his or her decision regarding the permit. So you can take the date that the administrative law judge issues her decision and then add 10 to 60 days upon that for a final determination on the permit. I can certainly answer any questions. I tried to be quick and just give a summary, but overall the contested case went well.
Any questions or comments? I know some of the members were watching this as well. Is Kevin on here today as well? I don't see him on the list, but any other questions? Very good. Thanks, John. Did you have anything else that you wanted to update us on?
Just two very brief items that Joe, the executive director, had mentioned, we did receive confirmation from US EPA WIFIA that they were requesting that we move the US EPA WIFIA loan closing date up to late September or mid-October. We are certainly interested in undertaking anything that we can do to move up the closing date, because that date is the date at which we lock in our interest rate. And as probably everybody knows who has been watching mortgage rates and other loan interest rates, we're in a historically low rate environment. And so we'll know pretty soon what our interest rate will be, but that was positive information or positive development. It does mean a large workload coming up in the next couple of months, but we can handle that. And then the other item was an update on the P3 schedule. We did have virtual one-on-ones with the P3 teams. Those have been very positive. We are working on releasing the next draft RFP release to the teams coming up here shortly. I would say that we have 3 interested teams, and the P3 team has been working very diligently on staying on track and on schedule. And so I can answer any questions regarding that, but that's just very, very brief updates on those 2 items.
Very good. Public outreach, Roger Olson or Rocky, which one of you are taking this, please?
Hi, Mayor. This is
I was not able to be there. This is Roger yesterday, so either Rocky or Commissioner Steen actually chaired the meeting yesterday. So I'll turn it over to you guys. Thanks.
I'll be more than happy to turn it over to Rocky.
all right. I do have a couple slides to share with you. Paul, do you want me to put those up, or were you going to have those up?
Why don't you go ahead and put those up so you can change slides?
So we had a public outreach committee meeting yesterday. Thank you, Mayor Dardis, for joining us in Mike Thorsted's position, and be great to have West Fargo's voice continue on there. Wanted to update the board as I updated the committee on some of the communications plans updates. You know, we had sent out a survey to several thousand people within Fargo and Moorhead and West Fargo and upstream, and I know I've gotten a lot of questions on this. So if you'll give me a couple minutes, I can run through some of the high level results and findings. You know, I think originally we had anticipated a 10% return rate. For those, remember we got that postcard in the mail and we asked people to mail it back. We were pretty surprised that we got well more than 10%. I think Fargo, we got something like a 25% return rate on a postcard, which I thought was incredible. So these are the numbers that we got back. I thought it's a pretty good poll amount. Some of the main points that we found from those questions were that respondents mainly got their information from the newspaper and news and radio. I think that's kind of as expected, but as we dig in, there's a couple little more analysis that I think will help us form our communications plan and how we target and who we should target. The other key finding that we were happy about is across all those 4 jurisdictional areas, the majority of respondents said they receive enough information about the project. You know, that's always a concern, is are we doing enough or not? And I'd like to dig into that a little bit more, but the fact that a majority said that, we were happy about that. Surveys did indicate that they would like more information in the newspaper and in social media. So we'll explore some strategies for that. And also upstream had a pretty strong response that they want more public meetings. That was, you know, we've seen with public meetings upstream, they're usually full rooms, and when we have them in town, it's much more empty. And so it's kind of consistent with what we know. So diving in a little bit more, do you get enough information about the project? Here are the responses from the 4 different audience groups. You can see that, you know, the yeses, the darker color there, do make up a majority, but I guess that's not really where we need to be targeting. You need to look at that lighter blue, and for the people that say they're not getting enough information, we got to dive in and find some correlations about, okay, how do we target them then? I think in Fargo, it looks like we're doing a pretty good job. The not getting enough information is smaller. As you kind of go out into West Fargo and Moorhead, and especially in upstream, there is still a significant number of people that want more information. While it's majority are getting enough, I think there's enough there where we need to figure out how to do more for those people. And what's interesting is we also asked how they feel favorable or not favorable about the project. And there's a pretty direct correlation in, are they getting enough information with, are they favorable about the project? So this is a somewhat busy chart. This is all the information about where they get their news from the 4 different groups. And then that line that goes across, if you look over to the right axis, you see the net favorability. So how people feel versus favorable versus unfavorable on the project. You can see in Fargo, we have a very strong favorability. Moorhead, we also have a really strong favorability of the project. West Fargo is pretty well split on it. And upstream, as very well as we expect, has an unfavorable view of the project. And I would hesitate to say that, this is one point in time. It doesn't show a trend. And so it would have been nice to have, what was this information 3 years ago and what will it be 3 years from now, to kind of see, are we making strides in the right direction or the wrong direction? And one of the things that I took from this is, with West Fargo sort of being split, I think we've done more in West Fargo over the last couple of years and made that a target. And I know Mayor Dardis has been very active, and so I'd like to think this is trending in the right direction. But with Mayor Dardis coming on the board, I'd like to spend some time with him to walk through some of this information and really get his take on how do we target those people that aren't getting enough information, or maybe they have an unfavorable view and we need to get some more information out to them. Similarly, in Moorhead, while we had a very strong net favorability, Moorhead showed a very strong no opinion as well of the project. And to me, I think that's sort of an interesting target, when they don't have a negative or positive. At this point, when we've been going for 10 years, to not have an opinion about the project means we're not reaching them, I think, in some way. And so we'd like to look at some strategies for that. I kind of updated, here's just some points I think I updated on these. But the one thing on here is that last bullet. What we found is when we look at those who view the project negatively or unfavorably, as we ask them, they're more likely to receive news than the other groups from social media and word of mouth. And I don't think that's surprising for those that follow social media about the project, but that word of mouth, I think, is something we can really target as well. I know we've done a lot of sort of civic group meetings in Fargo and Moorhead and West Fargo to try to hit those community leaders, opinion leaders in our community. We haven't done that necessarily outside the metro area, and maybe that's a strategy where we could, work on that word of mouth a little bit more, find different groups or civic groups like that we could, have Joel work with Joel to get out to. A couple more slides here. Terry kind of talked about this. This was a cool thing to have the Colonel come up here. We didn't want to show a video this month just because the videos don't work virtually, but we will send a link around. Here's a screenshot of what the inlet structure looks like. You have some recent views if you haven't driven down there. And then maybe a little less familiar, the Wild Rice River control structure that broke ground this spring. This is looking north. You can see the interstate to the right there, if you along the upper right side of the screen, if you can kind of orient yourself. And then that's the Wild Rice River that you see. So if you haven't driven by that, it doesn't look like much yet, but it's starting to. It's a pretty big area. But I guess I'd be happy to take any questions on the survey or anything else going on. Terry also talked about our wetlands meeting that we're going to hold in July, so I don't want to belabor that either.
Very good. Any questions by anybody on the authority? If not, we'll go to land management. Mary Sherling.
Good afternoon. Land management met yesterday and had a number of items to go over. We have in your packet, of course, our usual property status report is in there if you want to take a look at that. We also have got, within the last month, we have acquired 10 more parcels since May 20th. We've got no new appraisals since the last meeting. And, our CAS joint board continues to work on acquiring necessary property rights. We've secured 356 of the 375 biogeomorphic access agreements. One of the things that we took a look at yesterday was our mitigation plan. That has been approved by the state, the North Dakota Office of State Engineer. And of course, we continue to work with Minnesota, but there's a really great, I think, 4-page informational overview for our mitigation plan. And I think that would be a great thing to take out to those groups that Rocky's talking about. Really gives a good, concise information. Of course, our mitigation plan is online at our website, but it's very, very lengthy. So this gives all of you members an opportunity, if you want to just get a good snapshot of how we got to where we're at now with our mitigation plan. I think it's a really worthwhile work to take a look at. We also talked about, let's see, we had a MetroCog there, and they had a virtual meeting and had 65 people show up, which was good. I hope you've all had an opportunity to look at what they're proposing. That's, of course, in the works and will be for years to come, but I think it's exciting work. And you can go online. They have a draft plan, and the online survey is available for public review through Friday, July 10th. And so you can go to MetroCog's website to take a look at that. I think that's about it, except that we continue to work with the flowage easement valuations with Crown Appraisals on Phase 1B, the crop insurance development. We're working with Watson Associates. And then we have an issue with a cell phone tower, and I think Eric is maybe there if you want to talk about the details with that relocation, Eric.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks, Mary. I believe in your diversion board packet, Paul, maybe you can show that back again. Attachment 03 is related to a cell phone tower. There is a cell phone tower that exists in the footprint of the channel, and we have an obligation to relocate that tower. Over the last several months, we've been working with them to identify potential replacement sites, and the site that has risen to the top, and I guess they have approved through their process with propagation studies and conversations with the actual cell phone companies, is this yellow small little postage stamp spot on OIN 728. The Cass County Joint Water Resource District did purchase all of parcel 728 several months ago, just part of our normal acquisition process with that property owner. And the joint board has been willing to grant an easement to the cell phone company to relocate their tower. We did discuss this at the land committee, and they gave their concurrence that I guess no objections to granting that easement. Granting the easement will really help expedite getting the tower relocated as quickly as possible and out of the way for construction to proceed. And so with the land committee's sort of blessing of that, we did talk about that this morning at the Cass County Joint Board meeting, and they agreed that they're supportive of working with the SBA cell tower company for that easement. And I guess wanted to make sure the board was aware of that. And I guess it may seem like a relatively benign issue, but we know that as the project is buying some asset lands, we want to make sure that everybody is fully aware of what we're using those asset lands for. So the next map just shows a zoomed in version of the small easement area. So So the joint board is proceeding down the path of granting the easement, and I guess if there's concerns or objections, we'd prefer to hear them sooner than later.
And we need no action item on that, Eric. It's just something you guys have gone ahead with unless there was some objection on the board's action.
Yeah, I guess Shockley can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that the joint board is going to enter into the easement. They're the entity that owns the land, and so they would enter into the easement. I don't believe the DA board needs to take any action.
Very good. Any questions or comments to Mary or Eric?
Just one other item I would add. I usually at this time ask if the joint board has any report, or I believe Mayor Judd's there if they met today and had any reports on Minnesota acquisitions.
Thank you, Commissioner Shirley. We did meet today, and not a lot of action on our side. We did review property acquisition reports, also final acquisition summaries. The board also approved a relocation reimbursement claim, and also got an update on rights of entry actions that have been initiated in Minnesota. And Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe the counties where the jurisdiction are, where the actions were initiated, are in Wilkin County, and I believe Elbow Lake, which is in Grant County.
Yeah, there are what Mayor Judd is referring to is we have a small number of right of entry agreements that were scheduled to go forward through a court hearing. That court hearing was scheduled several months ago and got canceled because of the COVID issues. It recently was rescheduled, and so now there is one court hearing in Clay County on July 20th, and then a separate court hearing for the two properties in Wilkin County on August 18th. The Wilkin County hearing is going to be held virtually, and the judge is from Elbow Lake.
Thank you for that clarity, Eric. Yep. Thank you.
The other, I guess, I don't know if there's anybody from the joint board on today. I think Dan Jacobson is out of town. But
Eric, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Hi, Roger.
Yeah, to talk about the letters that are going out.
Yeah, I think we probably should give the board an update. I know there's some informational points that have been shared with the board recently as well.
Yeah, today at our meeting, Cass County Joint Board meeting, we authorized letters to go out to some property owners that we've been in negotiation for several months and even a few years. There's been, good dialogue back and forth, but we now are at a stalemate, and in most of these cases, we're a long ways apart. So we authorized a letter actually to let the Cass County Commission know that as part of the statute, these property owners have the right to be at the meeting and discuss this. And I believe there was 5 property owners that will be coming initially to the next Cass County Joint Board or Cass County Commission meeting to discuss their issues. And also we authorized a letter of 90-day eviction to let people know that they have 90 days to move from their place of residence, and we did authorize that today. And I made the statement this morning that this was difficult, but we know it's necessary. And it's part of the process. So, Eric, anything else?
No, I think you captured it really well, Roger. And I know, I think I've warned many of you, and I know we talked at the committee meetings yesterday and in the previous months as well, that these actions are not going to get any easier, unfortunately, and we sure wish that we could reach a settlement with these property owners. But as I understand the board's position and feedback from all of you, or many of you anyway, that we have, we've been negotiating. We start with an appraisal, and that's a market-based appraisal. We offer the appraised amount. We've increased our offers above the appraised amount. We've been negotiating with these property owners for months, if not years. And as Roger said, we've got a stalemate. And so this is the tough part of the acquisitions, and it's unfortunate. And I think the joint board, I can attest that they take this very seriously, and all that stuff. So I guess the next step, as Roger pointed out, is we'll be going to the county commission, asking the property owners or inviting these property owners to attend. And that's the next step in the process. And if need be, I think the joint board is ready to use sort of a last resort eminent domain action if necessary.
So what would happen at county commission and Eric? They would have an opportunity to say we're not being fair, and have them not go ahead with the last resort eminent domain, or what would be the expectation of those people who are not happy in front of the county commission?
Well, the statute requires us to hold a hearing, or requires the county to hold a hearing and invite the property owner. Some of the property owners may choose not to show up, but if they do show up, we will have our land agents, the people who have been negotiating directly with the property owners, attend the meetings. We'll have the chair of the joint board, all there to help provide a summary of the negotiations to this point and explain the issues of, how we're so far apart. Some of this will be in writing so that the commissioners have that material. And then essentially what the joint board will be asking is for authorization to use the last resort eminent domain action. And that's the action that we would look for the county to approve. I suppose the county could weigh in other options and things, but really the action that would be asked of them is to approve the use of the last resort eminent domain.
Roger, thank you and your board working hard on this. I know this is we've always been dreading to finally get to that, and I know Mary talked about it last year as well as chair, said when we would eventually get to this. So, but I thank you for your hard work. Any other report coming from land management?
So I might just briefly mention within the last, half hour, 45 minutes, there are some informational points about this topic that we just discussed. Those informational points should be in your inboxes. And so if you have questions, comments, concerns, whatever, please take a look at those. And we're here to help support the process as it goes forward.
Very good. Mary, that's it for your report?
That concludes. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like a couple of you are at the lake or something. It really looks pleasant behind you. Finance, we're going to go into, I think, Rick Steen, you're going to give the report. I would like you to take all three contracted actions in one swoop when you get done. So if you want to report on them, then we'll vote, if that'd be okay.
Sure, yep, that was my intent. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of items. Finance did meet yesterday. Pretty much everything that we addressed was covered either in the consent agenda, or John covered it earlier with his discussion. One item just to bring to the attention of the board is Kent Costin did inform the Finance Committee yesterday that the audit is completed, and I believe that was the last piece for the WIFIA loan application. And the Finance Committee did not have a chance to take a look at the audit, but that will be submitted, and the Finance Committee will take a look at that and approve that at the next meeting. With that, moving things along, I am going to turn this over to Joel. There are three task orders here with HMG, and the intent, I believe, was for Joel to address briefly the three items. If there's any questions, address those questions, and then take action on all three at the same time. So Joel, it's up to you.
Yep, thank you, Commissioner Steen. I just wanted to give a brief review of the 3 contracting actions prior to the vote and answer any questions that any board members may have. The first one is the Task Order 1, Amendment 16. This really was a result of the MSA negotiations with HMG. We pulled the professional liability insurance policy out of the overhead rates for HMG. Gave an advantage, financial advantage to the Diversion Authority Board. Also, there's some insurance advantage for the Diversion Authority in doing this. The second one is HMG Task Order 16, Amendment 13. This really has to do with the Lomar preparation for the 2nd Street Pump Station project in Fargo, as well as continued Clomar support. And some additional permit preparation for the Corps of Engineers 401 permit. And the last one is HMG Task Order 20, Amendment 5. This is work associated with the design of County Road 1617, adjacent to the inlet structure being constructed at the moment. And this will be for HMG to construct the transportation elements surrounding the inlet structure. All 3 of these task orders are contained within the budget, and the last 2 were anticipated in the program schedule. So, with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions? Do I have a motion?
This is Steen. I'll move to approve for the Diversion Authority Board to approve the contract actions referred to above.
Is there a second?
This is Olson. I'll second.
Okay, any other discussion? Roll call vote, please, Don.
Dr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mayor Judd,
Aye.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell, Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
That is everyone.
The other thing I heard about, Mr. Steen, is that Representative Schmidt said that Galian had finished his audit or gone through his reports of the Diversion Authority. And as far as Representative Schmidt was concerned, it did not seem like he was raising very many issues. I don't know, John Shockley, if you've heard from him, but he said it did not sound like he was going to say a very unfavorable report. So at least initially it sounds good. We'll see until he gives his final report, but I don't know, Joel, if you've heard anything else on that.
I have not, Chairman Mahoney.
John Shockley, have you heard anything else?
I have not heard anything.
Okay, well, I'll try to keep my nose to the ground and find out what's going on there. I think this is all our business. We are going to meet in person next time. Mayor Judd asked, where are we going today? And I think he's at his office right now, but next month we are going to meet. The restrictions that the governor's had on public meetings has gone down. Any of you, if you're concerned about getting the COVID, can do it virtually, but otherwise we'd meet in city chambers. And we can take up to certain numbers there. And if we have too many public, we'll put them outside in the lobby area. But everybody's done good work this June. We knew we'd get to this lawsuit. I'm glad we're finally getting through that. Joel, any other business?
No, Mr. Mahoney.
So if we're all set, thank you for meeting today. As usual, these virtual meetings are always a little interesting, but everybody's doing great work. I appreciate it. And we'll see you next month.